I'm going to take the next 10 minutes or so to talk about something that I'm very, very passionate about, transportation. And specifically, a revolution that's about to wash upon our shores, blow across our communities, and change the way we get around our downtowns. If you think about how your phone worked 15 years ago, those that remember rotary phones, or even just the phones where all you could do is pick it up and talk to people, and you didn't even know who was on the other line. And you think about what our smartphones do today, it's completely changed the way we live our lives. So that technology change has been revolutionary on the phone side, and it really affected all of our lives. But the way we get around, the transportation means that we get around communities, and our cars in general haven't changed that significantly. But that's all about to change. So what's happened with the phone is just going to start happening with vehicles. And the other thing that's kind of important to recognize is that it's not just the technology around the vehicles, but it's also the way we move people. So as a downtown, everybody's interested in trying to figure out how to make the downtown more exciting, more relevant, try to use it to stimulate development, but also to deal with some of the challenges that downtowns face all the time. Congestion, how to get people moving around, how to deal with large crowds, and how to kind of make your downtown a cool place that you want to live, where you want to work, and where you want to be. So with this new mobility that's coming our way, is focusing a lot more on moving people than moving vehicles. And again, it's all tied into technology. So I kind of call it a mobility evolution. But if we do it right, I think it can be a mobility revolution. So what is this revolution? What are the key parts of this technology of tomorrow? Well, there's three main things that are kind of driving it. One is autonomous vehicles, and I'm sure many of you or all of you have heard what those are. They're vehicles that drive themselves. They have a whole number of different technologies built into them. I'm not going to get into the details of the various types of vehicles. We have a session following this one that I'll get into a lot more details about it. The other key area is connected vehicles. So what connected vehicles do is they allow vehicles to talk to other vehicles, but also talk to devices put within the various roads and along the streets at the signals. And what happens is all that information gets fed to a traffic management center, where they have basically a large map of the city with all the vehicles on it in real time. And they can see where there's congestion, and it's a two-way communication stream. So it can actually, once they see that there's a problem or if there's a fire truck that needs to get by, they can send the messages all the way back through the system into the individual cars and tell you, you got to move out of the way or there's a better way to go. Now, we have apps that do that already, but this is much more engineering focused. It's very accurate. And as cars become driverless, eventually that's going to tell the car to do it without the human involved at all. So I just want to start off here by looking a little bit about what that revolution will look like. So we're trying to get a whole bunch of different ways of getting people around. And one of the other key aspects of it is the use of SAVs, which are shared automated vehicles. And I'm going to focus on that specifically as it relates to downtowns, because I think that's going to have the biggest impact on downtowns. And it's going to happen, it can happen right away. So we need to start thinking about it. So here's an example of an SAV. They're basically driverless shuttles. They have seating for anywhere between 6 and 12 people. You can fit another 4 or 5 inside them. But it's not so much the specific vehicle itself, but it's more about the concept of having a vehicle that can travel in relatively lower speed. So these vehicles typically travel about 30 kilometers an hour, 20 miles an hour perhaps. They're basically a little minibus. But because they're lower speed, they can work in sort of urban speed environments or downtowns, which means that they can also interface very well with pedestrians, with cyclists. You can put them on a pedestrian-only street, or you can put it along a pathway. You can put it on the side of a road or a shoulder. You can also drive in the actual street itself with vehicles, as long as the speed limits are kept relatively low. But what's powerful about them is that there's no driver. So unlike regular buses, the cost of operating a bus is about 70% of it is about the cost of the driver themselves. So your operating costs are way down. What's really powerful, though, is that you don't need a lot of infrastructure to have these operate. Unlike a light rail transit line or a trolley, These are rubber-tired vehicles that travel on roads and pavement like any other vehicle, but they're fully automated, and they're kind of cool. So if you're trying to develop, enhance your downtown, they're a big part of it. So much like any other transit system, these vehicles can replace the equivalent of 12 vehicles off your street. So that'll also help with congestion. The other thing that's powerful for downtowns is parking. So I'm sure you all are well aware of the impact of parking on your downtowns and the amount of space and that you need to be able to maintain that. In the future, as you start to move forward with these sorts of technologies, your need for parking is going to go down. And so you should be thinking about, well, what are you going to do with that land that you have now? You should be thinking about what are the developments in the future going to look like. And when I say future, I'm not talking 5 years or 10 years. I'm talking in 6 months, in a year. These vehicles are here now. So in order to get the planning going, you need to be thinking about it right away. So in terms of cities, it's going to have a big impact on the way they operate. They're just much more efficient. They can accommodate growth. In a downtown, especially when you're in a congested state, you can't widen roads. You just can't. But these vehicles allow you to move more people in the same space. And in fact, actually, you can eventually see a time where you start taking streets away from cars and just having SAVs operating on them. You can move a lot more people, and you can take the streets back and give it to the humans, give it to the pedestrians, and make it more of a people place than a place that's a large parking lot for cars that are stuck in traffic. Managed congestion, we talked about that on the connected vehicle side. It's going to improve the economy in general because it's going to draw a lot of attention. It's going to attract people to come to your cities, and it's going to allow people to get around more efficiently and not be stuck in traffic. They're driverless, so that means they should be safer. They will be safer. 93% of accidents are caused by human error. So if you take that out of the equation, you're going to have a huge impact on reducing injuries and fatalities. Save time, and at the end of the day, what you're really looking at doing is creating an improvement in the quality of life, which of course is going to equate to improving your city core. These SAVs are also really key for doing things like supporting transit, particularly higher orders of transit. So if you have a bus rapid transit, I know there's one we got one being built here in Winnipeg right now. That's fantastic. We want to continue to do those sorts of capital investments, but you can use SAVs to feed into the stations. And likewise with light rail transit or subways. SAVs and transit together equal the opportunity for fantastic development and sustainable development. So, you can look at increased density. You can look at the way you can move people around. And again, you can reduce the amount of parking at the same time, which allows those units to come down in price. We've talked about parking. These vehicles are also ideal for paratransit, for people in wheelchairs, or as the baby boomers, seniors. As people become seniors and they start to lose their driver's license, these are going to be able to maintain their mobility well into their later years of life. They also promote healthier lifestyles. The whole idea of getting people into a downtown without their car with them means that they'll probably stay there longer. Might go out for dinner, might see a show. Maybe they might choose to live in the downtown. That's, I think, where we all kind of want it all to go. Because the SAVs are lower speed, I mentioned about the idea of merging them with pedestrians and cyclists on corridors and taking them back to the human side. It's very, very important. So, in closing, what I ask for all of you in the audience here is to not wait on this, but to participate. To implement these types of changes are going to take an effort. Any kind of change always does. But we've got to start with baby steps. And one of the key things is convincing and educating the public that this is a good thing. And it's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of effort. So we need champions. And who better to be the champions than you folks here today? You all care about your downtowns. You're passionate about your cities. And this is going to be a huge tool in the toolbox of mobility and the toolbox of developing and enhancing downtown cores we've never had before. And I think that's very, very key to the future. So with that, thank you for your time.